Tonight we discuss various topics from Ethics of the Fathers, and again, so relevant, really touching, really relevant, really talking about our lives and how we can gain from the wisdoms of the sages to lead better lives.
Please subscribe and share.
So we're going to start with actually Becca's question. So Becca put up this long question on our WhatsApp group about people that go into like garbages, and pull out treasures. And she raised a lot of angles, but basically asking how is this viewed in a, I guess for a Noahide, what is this viewed morally, legally, spiritually, this idea of being a diver into, dumps and pulling out things. And especially she said sometimes stores put signs, you're not allowed to take it. So what does that work? So I did a little bit of research to understand the topic more, because to be honest, I never really heard about it before she raised her question. I think it may vaguely once. So legally, according to the government, again, there are some very specific areas that have specific problems with it, but I'm just talking globally. In America, there was actually a Supreme Court ruling on it, so you could see how this has really gained momentum. This was a Supreme Court ruling in 1988, where the Supreme Court said it is legal to do that. As long as the garbage is not on private property, you are allowed to take whatever you want out of it. If they already put in the garbage, it's in public property, it's not theirs anymore. And on other local levels, again, based on the little research I did, as long as the garbage is not on private property, there is nothing in the laws that says you cannot go for it. So what does Torah say about it? Torah says it's absolutely fine. Even if the people that threw it out, maybe they weren't doing ethical things. I don't know. Again, exactly. She raised a few different scenarios, but in the end of the day, it really doesn't make a difference. If they threw it in the garbage, it's no longer theirs. It's what we would call hefker, free for all. And if you're comfortable digging in the garbage and pulling out treasures, that is no problem. What if the store puts up a sign and says, do not take this garbage? Well, then it goes back again to the idea as where is the garbage located? If the garbage is located on private property, then you're not allowed to go on there. So therefore you're not allowed to go on there and take their garbage. It's still in their private property. But if the store's garbage bin is in a public area, like in the whatever, an area that we consider a public area that you have total rights to walk there, it's not the store's property, it's a public area to go there, then even if the store puts up a sign, they do not control their garbage. It's no longer theirs because they put it in the garbage, and by putting it in the garbage, they gave up their rights to it. So even if a store put up such a sign and you are a righteous, ethical Noahide, you are allowed to go digging in that garbage. So again, if it's on their private property, you're not allowed to go on someone's private property. If it's on their private property and they put up a sign, you can't take it, but anyway, you're not allowed to go on their private property. If it's on their public property, even if they put up a sign that says you're not allowed to touch their garbage, you are allowed to dig through their garbage. Again, we're not assuming you're making a mess and throwing the garbage all over the place, but however they do it, I have no clue. But if you personally are going into someone's garbage and pulling out their stuff, you are totally allowed to, as long as it's on public property, even if they tell you you're not allowed to. So that was basically the Torah's answer to that question. Now, neither of you author that question, but there did seem to be some discussion on the group on it. So do you have any questions or further comments you want to make about this issue? So Corey, were you the one that wrote about how your husband's store where he worked would throw out good furniture because they had nothing else they could do with it?
Yes. Yeah,
That sounded
it
pretty
wasn't.
bad.
And I don't know that wasn't for them. It wasn't new furniture, but they would take. Like he worked at a company that was like delivered furniture to a bunch of rich people, and they would just get rid of really nice furniture just because it didn't match their decor or whatever. So they they wanted the company to take all that. So they had a lot of stuff or returns that they had to move along, but they couldn't get the donation centers to come pick it up. So it would just end up sitting there. So then it ended up just going in the trash.
Right. And it does hurt to feel things are being trashed, but at the same time, sometimes there's no choice. Especially if nobody wants it, or you're gonna spend money to schlep it somewhere, or spend money to post on whatever, spend money to store it until someone picks it up. It's a pity, and we don't want to waste things, and it doesn't feel good to throw things out at all. It feels bad to throw things out, but that is sometimes what happens. So if they threw it out and some people got some gorgeous furniture, if they happen to, I don't know how this works with digging through garbage, but if that worked, then that is great. That sounds wonderful. But that definitely, again, if someone would have that option, 100% allowed to, no problem. Definitely in Chicago, people put things in their alley, no question, and definitely you can pick up things from people's alleys, and not digging through the garbage. You're noticing something in the alley that was good for you and not good for them. That's good. That's good. That's always considered good. All right. So that was that question. That was that issue. So we are continuing in our studying through various ideas in ethics of the fathers. And we're up to chapter 5, which means yesterday on the Sabbath, on Shabbos, we studied chapter 4. And this coming Shabbos, we are studying chapter 5. So therefore this week we'll be thinking about chapter 5. So we're just going to pull out some ideas from chapter 5 and see how they're relevant, what we can learn from them. And it's been very amazing, because I think each class we've done on this, we have seen so many ideas that are so current and so relevant, and like, oh wow, this it's really talking to us, which is of course what it should be. All right, so in the 10th Mishnah, each one of these statements is called a Mishnah because these are from that section of Torah called Mishnayos. So in the 10th Mishnah, it says, there are 4 character types among people. He who says, what is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. Sounds pretty good. The Mishnah says, nah, he's an ignoramus, like, not gonna work. He who says, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, some say he's like, okay, nothing so great, nothing so bad, average. But others say, no, this is actually the characteristic of the people of Sodom, which would mean it's very bad, worse than the ignoramus of the previous phrase. He who says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is yours. Oh, that's a chassid. That's a very pious, benevolent person. And he who says, what's yours is mine, and what's mine is a very wicked person. So if we're looking at these 4, it's interesting to try to look at them and say, what are the sages thinking, and how does this shed light on relationships and people? So they said, if someone says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, is an ignoramus. We're all going to share equally. Whatever's mine is yours. Whatever's yours is mine. And the sages say he's an ignoramus. What do you think they were thinking? Why do you think they said such a person's an ignoramus? I would imagine they said he's an ignoramus because it's just not gonna work. Like, no, that's not human nature to like be so like, yeah, we're all gonna share equally and everything is everyone's. And that's of course the sort of foundational pretend part of communism, somewhat of socialism, somewhat of the kibbutz movement, which of course communists invent, and it just doesn't work. The sages predated communism a long time ago, and they said it doesn't work. That's not the nature of man. It's not going to work that we're all going to share and share alike. It sounds nice, Sounds nice. You're not a bad person to say this. You could be very sincere and think this is a beautiful philosophy, but humans aren't wired that way. We're just not wired that way. There is the concept of people striving to acquire more, and people striving to succeed, and people working hard, and people earning, and people saving, and all that's part of how God made us, and those are not bad pieces. So to think that we're just going to put all that on the side and say we're all going to share and share alike, it's not going to create a functional society. Natalie, were you going to add something? No, sorry, your mic was off.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Now I hear you.
Maybe I don't have. Okay, maybe I don't have good signal out here. I was going to agree with you. It's like, you know, when you're working hard for your family and someone comes along and says, "Listen, I have a need. You have to give me that." You're going to say, "No, I worked really hard for this for my family."
Right. And the point is, that's not that we can't give to others, and if people have needs, of course we want to help them, but that the foundation is we all share everything equally, which again is the foundation in a certain philosophical sense of communism, somewhat of socialism, of the kibbutz movement. Even in the kibbutz movement, which is a very small, version of it, it still doesn't work. They still have found people. No, that's not how God made us. God made us that we do have this individual drive, and when there's what to strive for and what to succeed in, we're in a much healthier space. It doesn't mean we have to be materialist. It doesn't mean we have to want to have more than anyone else. It doesn't mean we want to have a lot. But we're naturally created in such a fashion of goals and achievements, and this helps us. This helps us focus. This helps us work. Man is born to work. This helps us work. And if we feel there's no point, there's no purpose because my succeeding is irrelevant, I'm going to have the same as everyone else if I succeed or not, sort of like how they do it in Sweden. And that's the highest suicide rate in the world there, because there's no drive, there's no point, there's no purpose. So that's the first idea.
I was going to say, speaking of history, that's why they say like the first American colony failed in Jamestown, was because they tried to do everything as a commune and it didn't work. As soon as they divided it up and among property, suddenly they had an abundance of food, and then nobody starved.
Right, exactly. Perfect historical case in point. That like we just don't have a drive. Why should I get up early and work hard all day farming for someone else to eat it? Oh, it's for me. It's for my own benefit. It's for my own family. I have a drive. It's to be equally shared. Well, he's not working hard. He's not working hard. He's not working hard. Should I be stupid and work hard? Oh, there's no food. Oh, we starve. Exactly. The second idea is what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. Now here the sages say, okay, that's a regular person, not an especially good person, and not an especially bad person. But other sages say, no, this is the characteristics of the people of Sodom, meaning Sodom and Gomorrah. We know we're very, very evil. So to say what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours is just regular. We get that. Yeah, it's not especially generous, but it's not especially mean. I'm not taking yours and I'm not giving you mine. So we can understand that's just like regular. But some sages said, no, this is a characteristic of Sodom, who were very, very evil people, notoriously evil people. So evil, they were destroyed by God. So why do you think some of the sages would say that's really evil? It's mine is mine, it's yours is yours.
There's a lot of selfishness that comes with that. I mean, I have a good example.
Yeah, let's hear it.
We went in on a farm with two other families. And so here's an example of the first situation you're talking about. Is we all pitched in and we all were working towards something together. And when the time comes for someone wants to leave and move on, then there's the question of, okay, well, now how do we divvy this up? Well, when you have somebody that put in the funds, because that is what was agreed on, and you have somebody else putting in their time, then how do you value somebody's time and at the end of the day say, I bought it, so this is mine, and you get nothing, and your time means nothing?
Wow.
Is extremely hurtful.
Wow. That must have been so painful. Wow.
So it's important to have, there's a lot of communication, and you need to have like written documents. And, dealing with people. I mean, it's true. It's how people function, and it's sad. But yeah, I have examples of, all of that. You can see it, how that plays out. But
that was after how many years of working together on the farm?
Let's see, 3, 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Right. We've all had those live and learn situations where everything has to be written out, everything has to be on paper, and it's even among the best of friends and the best of family, it just keeps you the best of friends and the best of family later. And that sounds very painful. So that definitely is showing how the first one doesn't work. And you have an example for the second one as well, you were saying?
Well, I was saying how it could show, in a way, selfishness of people, or I don't think it's greed or something like that. At the end of the day, what's yours is yours and what's mine is mine, being as in I purchased this, so it's mine. But at the same time, what about those who put in their time? They weren't getting paid, they didn't physically buy it, but they used their time. Like it was a mutual, come together. But at the end of the day, it was, well, I bought it.
Wow.
So it's mine.
Very painful. Very painful. So yes, that you are actually, I would agree with you in terms of why would the sages saying what's mine is mine, what's yours is so bad. I mean, again, some of the sages say it's just typical, but it's typical bad Sodom, because Sodom, as Corey's saying, it's the human race. We're supposed to be kind to others. We're supposed to be caring. We're supposed to help. And a person setting up like the rules of the system is what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. It's like we're saying, I don't care, you starve, you drown, you this, I'm taking care of my own and you deal with yourself, which could work if everyone can deal with themselves. But what if other people aren't? Like if you have food and there's a famine and you say, well, it's my food and there's a famine. Well, there's a lot of starving people, so you have an obligation to share and help. Well, they could have worked as hard as me. They could have been as smart as me. They could have been as successful as me. Well, clearly not. So even on one hand, we could say, no, it's just typical, not evil and not good, but just sort of typical to say mine, mine, yours, yours. But God put us in this world for something more generous than that, to be more other-centered than that, to be more conscious of our role in a society, in a group, in a community, to take responsibility for being part of other people. And therefore there is supposed to be, like, actually going back to the story of Bnos, when her father-in-law and her husband and his brother, and they left Israel. Why did they leave Israel? Because it was a famine. And they had food, they had money. And her father-in-law was like, if I stay here, I'll be supporting all these people, all these destitute people. I can't do that. I'm leaving. And he left his brethren. And that was considered horrible. Horrible. What did he transgress? The whole value system, the whole perspective on how we look at ourselves in a society with other people. Natalie, did you add something?
No, sorry, the beat.
Okay. Now, when someone says what's mine is yours and what's yours is yours, that's considered a very special person, because what I'm saying is no expectations. No expectations. Once you have expectations, things get messed up and people get hurt. No expectations. I'm willing to freely share, but I don't expect you to reciprocate. That's a good person. To give to others freely is good. To give to others without strings attached is even better. It doesn't mean they're not allowed to reciprocate. It doesn't mean they're not allowed to share as well. But when we're giving from that place of, I don't have any expectations. I'm not holding it against them. I'm not thinking, well, I did this for you. Oh, I did this for you. Oh, I did this for you. I'm leaving all that. I'm just giving because I have the ability to give. And all of us have one way or another the ability to give. Our time, our efforts, our money, our knowledge, our experience, wisdom we've accrued from our own bad mistakes. We all have something to give others. And say, I'm going to freely give, but I don't have any expectations of anything in return. That's the healthiest and the best. And of course, the wicked person is the direct opposite of that, as would be very, very, very obvious. So that is Mishnah 10. Now, if we look at Mishnah 11, there are 4 types of temperaments, 4 types of like personality traits here, personality types. 1, someone who's easily angered and easily pacified. So the sages say his loss is outweighed by his merit, meaning it's a big loss to be easily angered, but it's a bigger gain to easily make up. So the loss is outweighed by the gain. The other type, the second type, is hard to anger and hard to pacify. Okay, he's hard to anger, but then if he does get upset, it's really hard to forgive. His merit is outweighed by his loss, even though it's such a great merit to be hard to anger. But if it's hard to make up those few times you get angry, not worth it. The loss is bigger than the gain. Hard to anger and easy to pacify. Oh, this is that chassid. This is that pious, benevolent person that's really hard for him to get upset, and it's very easy for him to forgive. And of course, easily angered and hard to pacify, very easy to anger and very hard to forgive, that's a wicked person. So here we have, again, there are obviously other ways that divide us in terms of our temperament. But it's interesting how the sages are looking at these. Can you identify yourself among the 4?
Depends on what it is.
Which area is the thing that's triggering you and which is not?
If it's, I mean, there's so many, I used to be like this when I was in high school. My dad loves to tell the stories of me flying off the handle. Those are his favorite stories.
Okay.
And then I, learned that, okay, that's not really worth it. This emotional energy, just flying off the handle isn't going to make it any better. So we calm down. But there are occasionally things like movies that get the physics completely wrong. That's one. But this Roe versus Wade stuff is like, I got really upset about all of the politicians being more upset that it was overturned than pro-lifers seem to get upset about babies dying. That just was so, I could not believe that they're mourning the loss more than they were ever mourning the babies. That got me on a bit of a soapbox, for sure. So it depends on what it is.
So what are you supposed to gain from this Mishnah? You could say your temperament is your temperament, and of course, you want to work with it and try to, of course, improve it. But what do you think is the point the sages are making here? What I mean, how do you take, what can you gain from this statement when they're comparing people that are easy to anger but easily mollified, hard to anger but hard to forgive, hard to anger and easy to forgive, easy to anger and hard to forgive? What do you think is there, what can you take from that practically? What do you think is the point they're trying to tell you as you look at your own nature?
Could it be that everybody kind of starts from a different place? Everybody has a little bit different to work on?
Okay. What do you think, Corey? What do you think is the point, or what are we supposed to gain from this?
Oh, sorry. Technical difficulties. I mean, I think that shows us that it's good to see those different personalities. I know that I'm easily angered, and depending on the situation, can be easily or hard to get over it. I think that's showing us kind of where we're at with our hardness of our heart. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that means exactly.
Well, it's interesting that both of you are identifying yourselves in various ways as being easy to anger. I would assume if you say, well, I found myself in the category of easy to anger, the goal, the first go-to, there's sort of like two goals you could have, but based on how this mission is structured, I would say the goal will be to work on forgiveness. Because that's really what the sages are saying. You know, they're taking these two qualities, anger, hard, easy, forgiveness, hard, easy. And they're saying something very interesting, that even someone who's easy to anger, and if he forgives easily, he's still okay. His gain outweighs his loss. But someone who angers very rarely, but has such a hard time forgiving, those few times he gets angry, his loss outweighs his gain, which is like, really? This person almost never gets angry, and he holds a grudge for a long time. That's worse than this person who's always getting angry? So you're just saying, yeah, because that person's, like a fuse, getting angry, but also so quickly forgiving. So it's like, in the end, it's like washes away. Obviously, it might be difficult to live with a person like that, but it depends how intense is the anger and if it's directed at you. But I would think the first gain I would look at, if I'm looking at myself, and obviously people look at themselves and say, well, maybe they say, no, I don't fall into any of these categories. No, I almost never get angry and I have an easy time forgiving. Okay, great. This is not my challenge. But if they, no, I do get angry and there's a lot of things that trigger me. I would think the first thing to work on is forgiving. And then the second thing after that to work on will be not getting angry, because that's probably a much harder, deeper inner change, but probably more doable. And as we could see here, very valuable is if I do get angry quickly, I do want to forgive easily. If I'm going to accept that I get angry quickly, I need to accept that I have to forgive easily.
Which makes sense, because you see the effects of letting things bother you for long periods of time, or dealing with, unforgiveness. There's always that saying that you hear that oh, it's only hurting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And it could hurt yourself for years. For years and years and years. A person could be affected by the pain they're holding inside of themselves for how people have hurt them. Of course, we also believe that if you don't forgive someone, it's very bad for them. And that people that have hurt and have not been forgiven, we believe there's a lot of negativity that's going to happen in their life. It's a lot of bad stuff that's going to happen, because it's a really bad thing to have hurt people and those people be walking around hating you for it, or in such pain and anger at you for it. And that for sure creates a lot of negative energy toward you just in the world. But definitely for the person themselves, for us, we'll call it the victim here, for the person who got hurt and got angry, it's a tremendous burden to carry all that pain and anger around inside of you for a long time. It's so draining. It's hard to move forward when you're so debilitated by all that burden, that energy burden you're carrying. And it is, on that level, as you're saying as well, just much healthier to forgive and move on and say, okay, it was what it was. It was the hand of God. Everything's the hand of God. This person was God's tool. Now, obviously, God does good with good and bad with bad. So maybe they're not the best person if they're God's tool for bad, but at the end of the day, it was God's plan.
Just a quick question on that.
Sure.
Well, while we're on the subject, so there's a situation where it was a very long time ago, probably 15 years ago. And so in the meantime, have forgiven that person for the hurt. However, still find it difficult to be in the same room with them. Can tolerate it, don't like it. What are your thoughts?
If you've forgiven them, obviously this person must have done something really bad to you. If 15 years later you can't be in the same room with them, do you feel scared to be in the same room with them, or just upset by them, so you don't want to be in the same room with them?
I just don't want to be in the same room with them, because it's like after 15 years, would still love an apology, never gonna get one.
So they're triggering your pain. In other words, seeing them is triggering the pain over what they did to you. You forgave them. You don't want bad to happen to them because of you. But when you see them, it reminds you of the pain and the unfinished business. So I think that just sounds like you're human. And I wouldn't feel you have to beat yourself up over it. And I would advise you to try not to be in the same room with them. Because, you don't have to put yourself in pain over these types of things. Again, is it possible to be holier than that and to forgive them so completely that you don't mind being in the same room with them? It has a lot to do with personality also. It has to do with holiness, but also has to do with personality. And I think if you forgave them, that's good. You forgave them, and if you can help yourself and protect yourself from being in the same room with them, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
So I guess that everybody's different, but based on my own experience, that how important it is to have the conversation. You have this time that you may need, depending on the person, on, to calm yourself. But at some point, it's important to come back to it and have the conversation on how this person hurt you. And, then you may get your apology or may not, but at least even you expressing your hurt is a huge relief. And if that conversation has never been had, then it will always be there. As much as you forgive somebody, I can be in the same room with someone who deeply hurt me because we've had the conversation. I've forgiven them. I don't trust, things aren't the same, but there's not that same level of hurt.
I think you're right if it's a safe person to have a conversation with. I think it depends who. It depends on the other person, because I actually very often recommend people that are carrying around hurt to go back to try to, sometimes you have to find the person that hurt you and talk it over with them. And very often, again, if they're basically a good person who was in no way trying to hurt, very often they're completely oblivious that they ever did anything to hurt you. I mean, again, it depends on the situation, but I'm saying I've definitely been in situations where completely oblivious, had no clue in both directions. Someone could say, thank you for this and this that you told me 10 years ago. I don't remember a thing. Or you hurt me so deeply. And I also don't remember. I'm sometimes you say something and it triggers someone and you don't know anything about it, but you hurt them. But if someone does that to me, which has happened in my life, I'm very grateful when someone tells me. And I spend a long time apologizing and a long time trying to remove years of pain. I don't want anyone in pain, and I definitely don't want anyone in pain because of me. So is it possible that me, sincere, good person, caused pain to someone? Yeah, it is, because I have. Just because it's how, whatever. I don't know, it's how people, whatever happens in life, Think of like 3 times when I know people have years later were in pain because of something I said once to them I didn't even realize, or whatever, was misconstrued or wasn't, or whatever. So I agree with you. I think it's a great idea to go back to the person and talk it out with them, especially if they're a sincere, good person who will definitely apologize and definitely feel horrible that they caused you years and years of pain. But if they're not a good person and not a healthy person, it might make it even worse inside of you, because here you're opening up your heart, which is making yourself vulnerable and sharing how you got hurt. And then they could turn it all on you and explain how you're really the problem. And it was really all what you did wrong. And you just like, what, I was the innocent victim, but so I'm just saying, I agree with what Corey's saying, as long as you're dealing with a healthy person, a normal.
Yeah. In this person's case, it was hurt that was caused to me while that person was going through a case of extreme depression, and me as a very young person, not mature enough to understand that. And so I feel like bringing it back up, it still hurt. I still feel like they were conscientious enough to realize it. Anyways, I would be afraid that bringing it back up would send that person back into depression, which is one of the reasons I never have.
So then maybe it's not a good idea. But I'm saying in general, I think Corey's advice is excellent. And again, as long as the person that hurt you or that you're upset with, that you caused you pain, is like even Corey's saying that even if the person doesn't apologize, there's still a relief just that you spoke it, that you said it, that you stood up for yourself. And I agree with her. So I think as long as the person is healthy enough, good enough person, that they're not going to turn it all around on you and how you were really the perpetrator, so to speak, and how you're really the bad person and how you really are the source of the whole problem, then I think what Corey's saying is right. But if something could happen along those lines, I don't know, maybe you write a letter, so it's a step removed. You can say it, you can mail it, but it's not going to come flying back in your face. And they have time to process it and think. Very often people's defense mechanisms are like, right away, instant, like reflex, rebound. No. But then when you have a little time to think, you're a little more open that maybe you really did something wrong, and maybe you should apologize. So I do think in general, what Corey's saying is a great idea. But I hear what you're saying. In this specific case, it wouldn't work for the reasons you're saying. Corey?
That makes sense. And it is helpful. Another thing to help, how you're saying everything's the hand of God, to focus more on, once you understand the circumstances behind it all and realize that, okay, this happened for a reason. Now what can I learn from it? What good has come out of this? Have I, how have I grown from it? And if I hadn't, then look at it again and see what good you can take from it, because that was the purpose of it.
I guess I never thought of it that way, but you're right. I got my husband out of it, so it can't have been that bad.
Right. And so with that, with that piece of that brings peace within itself. If you can't have the closure on the other end, which is just a small part of it, but the main part is, what can I learn from it? And as long as we're learning and choosing to, take something good from it and be better because of it, then that's the purpose in my mind.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And I always think we have to go back to that point. Everything is God. And God loves every one of us. Every one of us. And he's the ultimate scriptwriter here. Even though, this person hurt me and this person messed me up, this person stuck out their foot and I tripped and fell on my face and they laughed. But there was God orchestrating all that. This person clearly has issues and has problems and is not a good person. But why was I their target? There's a God, and like you're saying, what was I supposed to grow from there? What was I supposed to gain? What different choice did I make because of that? And how has that helped me in my life? So it's always very good to reflect. And that definitely, as Corey's saying, brings peace. Because like you're in pain for years over this and this, and you're like, wait a minute. God orchestrated that. That's how I met my husband. I needed that. So it's like, oh, okay. So then you can get more at peace with what happened, because you see how it was part of God's loving hand. Even if the people involved were not trying to be loving at all, but they're the puppets. It's part of God's loving script for you. And that's always really important to come back to that point. Really, really important. All right. A little bit late, but let's go to the next one. 17. I'm here about controversy. 17th Mishnah. Any controversy which is for the sake of heaven will have an abiding result. And that which is not for the sake of heaven will not last. And then they say, what's the controversy for the sake of heaven? The controversy between Hillel and Shammai. There were two sages that argued, but their argument lasts, so to speak. It continues because they were both very purely for the sake of heaven. Now, what's not for the sake of heaven, well, this was yesterday's Torah portion, the controversy of Korach and his faction, because they were doing it for their own aggrandizement, for their own ego, for their own desires, and the whole thing completely fell apart. So it's interesting that this is part of ethics of the fathers, because you could say, well, I don't know that I would, think of that in this context. But again, I think the sages here are holding up a mirror for us to look at ourselves and sort of ask ourselves this fundamental question. What do you think is this essence question we're supposed to be asking ourselves based on this Mishnah?
Maybe what our intentions are with everything that we do in our life.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I think that's, again, I'm not saying this is the cap on everything the sage has meant. Obviously, there are layers and layers of meaning. But I think on the most basic level, it's like Corey's saying, So we see here, there's such a focus on what's your real intention. Only God knows. You can pretend whatever you want, and you can even fool people. So Korach had this whole argument, officially for the sake of the people and really for his own ego issues. Hillel and Shammai disagreed on things, argued. Theirs was for God. Theirs was pure. His was all about self. So they could be seen, of course, I'm not saying what they did was the same. What they did was very different. But seemingly, well, this is a controversy and this is a controversy. Seemingly, you could be doing the same thing. And what determines, is it really good and worthy, that it will, so to speak, last, which has many layers of meaning, or that it's just going to fall apart? What's the purity of your intention? Why are you doing this? And the only person that mind sometimes really knows is you. What's triggering you to be so nice? What's triggering you to be kind? What's triggering you to be a Noahide? Like, why are you doing what you're doing? And to really analyze yourself, to really demand from yourself that your motives be pure. Because those motives are going to flavor everything that comes from those motives. They're going to be within. They're going to be like the spice, the scent of everything that comes from the motives is that intention. Now, and being human, not always are intentions so pure, even in the good things. Like you could say, well, why did you become a Noahide? And maybe you had the purest intentions, and maybe there were other factors that weren't as pure, but they led you to a very good thing. Yes, true. But now you can work on purity of intent. Because that purity of intent does subtly color everything coming from it.
That's funny you should mention it. I very rarely get into arguments on social media because most of the time it's just not worth it. But I did happen to this morning, I got into a little scriptural battle where essentially someone was using, they had like a kernel of truth in biblical values in terms of like, at the end of the day, God's going to judge you for you and not anybody else. And then using that to justify like tons of terrible behavior. And I just couldn't let it go. And I very lovingly said, you need to give the Bible a reread. And then a friend of theirs quoted probably like 15 different verses out of context. And so then I just pasted Psalms 119 below that. And trying to think now how pure my intentions were versus my ego versus maybe just trying to like relieve that pressure of I've been wanting to argue with someone over this and I found my target.
Now I have my dartboard. Now I have someone that I could throw this all out. This is for all other people that I can't. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And again, we really look at it on two levels. There's a famous Hasidic story where the Rebbe is instructing his followers that when you come to me and you're going to hear all these Hasidic discourses on your way home, every little town you stop and you have to give it over, to share with everyone else the wealth, the knowledge. And there was one follower who was really good at this. He was very smart. He was very, smooth-tongued, a very good orator, a very good teacher. So he would go to the Rebbe. He would hear all these great things. He would give it over. Everyone was like, wow. And he felt that this was giving him ego. He's like, well, ego, that's a very big crime in the Jewish, especially in the Hasidic world lexicon. This is like, the biggest crime is ego. So he went back to the Rebbe, to the the sage, the guide, and he said, I see I'm getting ego over this, so I guess I should stop. I mean, should I stop? Because he's saying very sincerely, he wasn't doing it to, he didn't mind doing it, but he was like, I shouldn't get ego. And the Rebbe said to him, you should become an onion, but you should still keep doing this. Which means basically you're doing a good thing. You're getting damaged in the process. Yeah, you are getting damaged in the process. But guess what? What you're doing is good and needs to be done. So you'll have to deal with damage repair. As people say, again, maybe what the Rebbe meant when you say you should become an onion is like you put an onion in a soup and the whole onion disintegrates, but it flavors the whole soup. So the onion fell apart, but the soup has good flavor. So you're going to have problems, but you're doing good things. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, here we're very clearly being told, if your intentions aren't pure, everything that comes from it isn't going to be pure. And I've actually, it's interesting you're saying this, because I've actually more than once told people when they're officially arguing, for the cause, for the good stuff, for God, and it's not accepted, I'm like, check if your ego was involved. Because if your ego was involved, then that could be truth shouldn't put someone off. Truth is truth. Truth should be accepted. So if it's not accepted, maybe your ego is flavoring it, and that's what they're feeling. They're not feeling, your words are true, but they're not feeling the truth. They're feeling the ego, and that's why they're rejecting it. So I think basically it's like, not so simple. There's this and there's this and there's this and there's this. And on one hand, sometimes something really needs to be done. And this is exactly what God would want to be done. And you're human and flawed and are walking in with your clay feet and dirty hands and ego. And you try to put it all aside, but in the end of the day, you might be coming with it, but it's got to be done. And other times you're like, wait a minute, I don't know if this has to be done. And I definitely know I'm not doing it for the purest of reasons. Maybe I'm mad. Maybe I want an excuse to vent on them. Maybe my ego needs to be expressed here. And then you know what? I think I'll pass. So it's not always so simple. It's not always so, black and white. But definitely on one hand, we have to look at our intentions and understand they're going to impact what we're doing. And sometimes on the other hand, even if we're not in the holiest space, we just got to try to pull ourselves up as much as we can and do it anyway, because the thing has to happen. And whatever happens to me, that's the fallout, but the thing has to happen. So I don't know if you were right or wrong this morning, because I don't know enough about the story, but those are the things to think about on both sides of the coin for the future, for another time. It's about my ego. Maybe I should take a pass. If this has to happen anyway, I can't take a pass, but I can try to get as much of my ego out of it and just really be focused on the issue and not on me, the message, and not me, the glorious messenger. Sometimes. All right. Wow. All right. Well, we'll stop at this point. And thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining. And hopefully some of these lessons you can try, I can try, we can try to apply and to carry through the week. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.